more complex and more capable. The computer is totally ubiquitous in every body and invisible, so is the affordances. That is why we don't know what a body can do. Gabor systematically analyzes the relationship between affordances and perceptual information about affordances. He identifies 4 possible combinations of the presence or absence of affordances on the one hand, and the presence of affordances of information about affordances on the other hand. Perceptual affordances, false affordances, hidden affordances, and correct affordances. Most of that we are dealing now, these days in this conference, is kind of hidden affordances. This is from the point of view of a human-computer interaction. Schmidt calls this term as implicit affordances. Explicit interaction, traditional explicit interaction with computers, contradicts the idea of invisible computer and disappearing interfaces. In order to create natural interaction, it appears we need to understand implicit interaction in addition to the explicit interaction. Explicit and implicit interaction can be based on different modalities, including command line, graphical user interfaces, and interaction in the real world. The topic of this conference, Affordances of Symbiosis, initiated by the long existing question of Roberts about the meaning of the movement in interaction. The movement itself has an artistic meaning in the context of contemporary dance. But when interactivity involves, does it only gain the meaning when we get the response? In that sense, the movement turns out to be an instrument which has a purpose in the context of interaction with the environment. If this is a dance piece, we can leave this unquestioned, but if it's an environment with a purpose and function, then we are creating affordances while we are working on these possibilities of interaction. Take the example of a musical instrument where there is a physical and direct relation between the action and the result. You hit the chords of the guitar, you hear the sound. But when a musical interface is the subject, this direct relation between the action and the relation is not anymore there. A mapping process takes place. The interaction in such a musical interface can be explicit or implicit, what's Schumann's terminology. Kapelin and Nardi propose a mediated action perspective on affordances in human-computer interaction. They describe the structure of instrumental affordances and comprising handling affordances, possibilities for interacting with the artifact in question and effector affordances, possibilities for employing the artifact to make an effect on the object of interest. So, we are now here actually in the first panel, the mapping for meaning. So where it happens, it takes place between this person, factors, and the object, handling affordances and effector affordances. So we have 4 talk in this first panel. In line, we will start with Robert's talk. Now there are 2 options. Either I can read the bios of the speakers, which is boring, or they can just introduce themselves with a few words at the beginning, where are they from, the institution, and maybe their interest.
In my case, I don't need an introduction.
Okay, now you can start. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're American, you know this poem. The next line is, how can we know the dancer from the dance? Poem by W.B. Yeats, and it discusses content and form, where they meet. Synesthesia and interactivity. Synesthesia means when your senses get confused. So you can be listening to music and feel it in your body, or you can be dancing and somehow hear music. I mean, our senses mix. This is very important to my work as a dancer. So who am I? I'm Robert, and I'm a dancer and a choreographer, and I work with interactive technology since 1974. So I've been at it a while. And I'm working with this motion composer, the device project. Good, I'm going to try to go quick. So my questions, and I really had more questions than answers. I'm going to have some answers, but mostly I'm going to just pose a few questions. Concern what interactivity, what I feel like induces this thing, interactivity. What we're doing now. I mean, I'm talking and you're listening, but we're looking at each other. There's something going on. So this interactivity thing can be aided or modulated or supported by technology, or it can actually be the opposite. It can be blocked. Technology can actually get in the way of interactivity. So I'm interested in the former. How do we use technology to actually get people going? So the bottom line is what engages us when I'm making interactive environments. I want people to start moving. I want them to, yeah. So it's a difficult problem because it involves technology as well as a mapping, sense of body, and questions of art and artistic sensibilities. And even when you think you have those things under control, sometimes there ends up with some strangeness. It doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It should work. Or the opposite. This works. It shouldn't. So it's as much art as it is science. Is the best way I can say it. This game of mapping. The word mapping, we know. When I say mapping, I mean what about my body is going to influence what about the media. And my medium is music. I don't do much visual work. It's all about the body and sound. And we call that mapping. So when I raise my hand and the sound gets louder, that's a mapping. Hand height to loudness. I would describe that as a mapping. So let me just try to ask some really stupid questions. What is dance? What is music? Most languages of the world have a word for both dance and music. See, now you're looking for one in English. There isn't one. And if you're thinking in your own language, you might be looking for one in your native tongue. We don't have a way to say dance music. Right? We've got these two concepts, these two models. I mean, a simple example that most of you probably know is capoeira, Portuguese movement music tradition. It's as much a music tradition as it is a movement tradition. But in most languages, there's actually a word. I mean, capoeira, I don't think is a verb. You can't capoeira or something. Right. But most languages have a verb for dance music. So that's odd. Why should we have a word for dance music, right? Moving the body, contracting muscles. And then we have music. And why should they be so confused in our perception? So human beings have been walking this earth for 150,000 years. Most paleoanthropologists say that it was around this time that Homo sapien came out of Africa. The earliest 100,000 years. Now, the earliest exhibition of artistic intention, one of the earliest exhibitions of any intention, is this stone. This was found in sub-Saharan Africa. It dates back 70,000 years. Someone scratched these patterns. No animal could do this. Human beings did this. We have no idea why. It's something. It's something special that someone took the time to do. The oldest musical instrument is this piece of flute. This is carved from a juvenile bear bone, a cave bear, and it was found in northwest Slovenia, and it's been carbon dated to 67,000 years. It's a long time ago. By the way, the holes are pentatonic, right? I mean, they've analyzed it's a flute, right? I mean, you can't blow it anymore. But the spacing of the four holes, you don't see them all, are spaced according to the scale, pentatonic scale. So it's old. It's very primitive. Now you just think about it. This is before language. There's no evidence that humans had any ability to speak in those days. And yet, they're playing pentatonic scales on musical instruments. And we can be pretty sure that they're dancing as well. These are the earliest evidences of dance. There's these famous El Castillo caves. You may know there's a bunch of active scenes. They're quite old. It's somewhat debated how old they really are. But certainly there's many cave drawings showing wild dance parties. These are just two examples from Spain. So, I think my point's obvious. There's something human about it. It's very deep. This is before language, right? We think of language as being what defines humans. You know, music and dance define humans on a much deeper level. It involves, there's some ritual. As Petra mentioned, ritual is somehow important to us. And you may deny it. You may say there's not much rituals left today. We have them. We eat a special way. We sit a special way. We greet a special way. We go to rave parties a special way. There's parties. There's still dance and music in our society. It has a form. And it has a ritual. There's a time to dance and not to dance and so on. It can be quite important to if you ask people, I read a survey, or actually she said they asked people how important is music to you. You know, people put it way up there. You know, it's way up with love and health and music. So what is that? What is music and what is dance? I asked this to our guests at the workshop yesterday, a person who was there. And I don't know, what can I say? It's fun. Okay, gets you going, gets the blood going. You know, why? Why do we want to jump up? Why do we want to use our bodies? I can tell you my work, it's very important to use the body. The book, I work with 6 composers very intensively, as they will attest. And the process of work is jumping up and moving around and sitting back down again and typing on the computer, jumping up and moving around. And the more they do that, the more progress the environments make. I peek in and they're jumping up and down and running around. You know this way to do. So let's say you have your t-shirt on and you accidentally put it on inside out. Your t-shirt is inside out. So the label of the t-shirt, what is normally facing you, is now facing out. Okay? You put your t-shirt on inside out. Is your left arm going through the left armhole of the t-shirt? Or is your left arm now going through the right armhole of the t-shirt? Now, this is a question which you must answer. Is your left arm still going through the left armhole of the t-shirt? Or is your left arm now going through the right armhole of the t-shirt? And you're trying, see the eyes on each side. This means you're doing this modeling. What you really want to do is this. None of you have done it. I do it. Answer the question. Answer that question. Why is that necessary? You put your t-shirt on every day. You want to know how to do this. I'm guessing most of you don't know the answer. Who knows the answer to this? You have a guess? Who knows the answer to this question? Who is sure? Who's 100% sure? Simple question. Nobody even knows the answer. You have a guess. Are you sure?
Sure.
You're perfectly sure. 100%. And what's your sure answer?
That's the right side, go to the left.
5 times going to the right. Oh, okay. He might be right. He might be right. But now I want you to answer this question.
But the reference.
There's only one way to answer the question. I want you to do it.
Can you repeat the question last one?
You put your t-shirt on inside out. Your shirt.
Inside.
Inside out. There's the writing on it, it's backwards.
Okay.
The label is sticking out.
Okay.
So is your left, and I'm insisting that you answer this question. And these 3 people are the only people who are actually taking me seriously and attempting to answer this question. If you don't do it physically, you have to use our bodies to study questions.
Stutter.
And they're sure. And they're completely sure. You guys still don't have any idea. Because you got to do these things. Right? That part of the brain, you know, I've asked you a left brain, this is something I used to say, it's not as simple as this. I've asked you a left brain problem. No, I've asked you a right brain problem. Right brain is supposed to be the spatial orientation. And the left brain is how you speak and sort of think, this cognitive thing. So you're trying to solve a cognitive problem. You're trying to solve a spatial problem with a cognitive process. You can't. You have to use your body. You have to use your body to solve these things. Right, that's the first thing. So let me just talk about mapping another few minutes. And Ekman, tell me when I have only 5 minutes left. Just let it go, because I have no sense of time. So this is a sort of classic, what I call a classic model for mapping. And and they talk about simple. So these are the scales, the way to match up body with sound, for example. So you have convergent, divergent. In other words, one movement can be many different sounds, or many different movements can be one sound. Multiple sounds can come out of one movement. They can be complex, multi-layered. That seems to be also a trend these days. You hear this word multimodal interaction, or it can be very simple. I made that sound. I reject this way of thinking. I found it to be useless. It's interesting and useless. What's been useful is my own kind of intuitive synthetic approach. So, discrete actions, discrete sounds. What do you know? So I make a sound, I make a discrete movement, and I get a sound. It only works if it's discrete. If I'm moving all the time, and I'm getting sounds all the time, I don't know. I don't feel it. I don't feel it's me. There's music, and there's movement, and so on. But if I do something discrete, I touch this, these skin seem so cool. I touch this. I close my hand. Something discrete. I close my eyes. Oh my. These discrete. On off. Then I have a chance. Tags. I usually invent these words. So if I put out my hand and make a sound, E, and I remove my sound, or I remove my hand and the sound stops. E, E. Now watch this. D. There's more to it. Feels better. Feels more like my hand. What did I change? I added a D sound at the beginning instead of E. I went D, and I put that little pitch bend at the end. D. Now I start to have a feeling that I did that. So I put a little tag at the beginning and at the end to mark the beginnings and the end. It has to do with the discreteness. We work with 4 kinds of activity, and activity is the most important, and so we classify it in different ways. An important way that we don't use in our work very much is this kind of idea. A lot of movement, perseveration refers to movements that go back and forth, or pendular motion. There's a lot of movements in human beings. We walk with perseveration, it's cycling, and repeated movements. Let's see, so my finger, we've got deep, 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 deep. Deep, 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 deep. Suddenly it feels more like my finger. That direction had one sound, that direction had another. Simple like that. So I used to blink my eyes. I did a piece where I played piano with I played drums with my eyes. No, I had 2 sounds. Open was tick, and closed was duk. It was a wood block. So the lower note was the eyes closed. Feels reasonable. Upper note was the eyes open. And I go, but it was a very fast system. So I could just blink, blink, blink. And what would happen is you would miss a blink, and it would get reversed. So open would be the lower wood block, and closed would be the upper wood block. You know what? It hardly matters. It's much more important that there are 2 sounds than what those sounds are. So we have this basic model of A, B, A, B. So it's just things like this. And there's a bunch of things we kind of learn. Height and weight. I'm talking about weight in the acoustic sense. In other words, when you stretch up tall, it's a higher pitch. Seems right, and then you go down low, it's a lower pitch, but it's not as simple as that. When our voice goes from low to it's not just a change in frequency. You'll accept that, right? Because the transformation of sound is quite complicated. High pitch, it has much more air in it. It sounds thin. It sounds stretched up tall, doesn't it? The way sounds are down here. Boom, boom. Simple. Just simple. Direct kinds of connections. By suspension, I mean that when we freeze, this could be silence. I feel like I'm doing Tai Chi, so I hear silence when I do Tai Chi via flute. There's another kind of freeze, which is dynamic, which is like this. This might have a suspended sound. Dancers, if you don't know what suspension is, dancers know this word. It means that with the feeling going up and over something. The girl on the toe shoes in ballet, she does a movement called piqué, where she plants the tip of her toe on the floor, and she perches up on her toe and falls down the other side. So that going up and over the top, it's a special feeling. It's very feeling. It has to do with your center of gravity. So it's a very strong field. PK is used a lot in noise, and so suspended sound, what I just sang, kind of honest. But it's not silence, even if the suspension is being held. Even if it holds the suspension, that's a sound. I'm sorry, that's not silence. All right, so this is just how I feel about it. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but it's how I feel. And that's how I design, that's why I do my work. It's just sort of my feelings. I sort of put them in order what I think is important. Near the bottom is something that actually most people do first to do interactive environments and stuff. They map their position in the room. I think it's one of the least interesting things, where I go in the room. There may be one sound over here, a sound over there. I don't think we care that much about where we are. We care much more about what we're doing and how tall I am. So it's useful. We have some environments that are based on the tonality and the particles. They're based on one-dimensional array. I'm also often asked why we don't use a three-dimensional tracking. We do use a 3D sensor, but we don't actually use it for 3D. I'm not saying it right. So when we started making, when Free Device and I, Free Device engineer, developer of Icon, you have to remind me of something. It's fine. When we started working, we had one camera here, we had one camera there, we had one camera there. Now I have 3D, so now I can do anything and I can choose what I want to do what. And then after a while, that's a lot of work hanging those cameras, and it's also a lot of programming, CPU power to process all those pixels. And we went down to 2. We did a lot of wonderful shows with 2. And then we went down to 1 camera, and we found out actually the shows were just as good. We got just as much good feeling out of it, just as much applause, and just as much fun. Particularly using the camera in this corner. Because this corner sees this movement, it sees this movement, and it sees this movement. X, Y, Z, all in one camera. So tell me that's not 3D. That's 3D. So cameras see 3D. You see a 3D world even if you only have one eye. That's a 3D world. You live in it and you understand it and it all. So it's not all about having all that data. You don't want too many dimensions. Life is hard enough. All right. I'm kind of done. I just answered a few questions and then I'll quote Nietzsche. Okay. Any questions? I'm done.
How do you position your work in regards to what David Walker did as pioneer leader?
I don't know his artwork very well.
He sees the,
I know he sees. Yeah. I know the early systems of motion.
He's a very famous nervous system.
Nervous system.
So
Very nervous.
Not just any nervous system, it's a very nervous system.
It's a very nervous system. Yeah. So how do you,
I don't think he's got the mapping right. I don't really want to know how I really feel.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got a really good grasp on mapping.
Why?
Because of this kind of stupid stuff I'm talking about. It doesn't interest him, I think. I've never seen this very tangible relationship with movement.
So he once said something which I found interesting. I read about it. That he found himself having to sort of being surprised. In fact, experimenting himself, his system, he found himself surprised at the way he was moving, the way he was kind of like discovering for himself, even though he's a designer, found himself surprised of how bizarre he was moving inside of his own system.
Right.
The reason I'm saying that is because it still remains, all of that remains within the realm of pre-programming. Your entire research is based on the immediate.
Let me try to respond to that in my short minute. So I've talked mostly about how to get the causality thing. Oops. Causality would be sort of the name. And I'm in this kind of a dichotomy with causality one-to-one. Freedom, freer, improvisation.
Indeterminacy?
Thank you.
On the keyboards.
Perfect word. Okay, great question. I'm thankful you bring that up. So, because what we need, I feel, in an interactive environment that feels right, is both. And you can't have both because they contradict. They're basically a dichotomy. Either I get my sound or I get an interpretation of them and I don't know what I'm doing. So when I say both, I say an alternation. The way we find is best to work is first, oh, I got that. And pretty soon people are ready to do this, and what's going on? I don't know, I don't care, but it's great. I'm experiencing something, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's me. So we guide people into a free form thing through very step-by-step thing. And as you know, as we all know in the workshops, it's human nature. The first thing you do with people is, you've all got your first exercises where you do something real simple and a task. I start up with a task. You touch your palms to somebody and you do some blessing. And then that leads from a simple task to quite deeper psychological types of exchanges. So I don't mean to argue, but I'm just telling you, this part I found to be the easy part in a way. And this was always a bit the tricky part.
Yeah, I think that, this is a quite perhaps important aspect in definition of what I call the instrumentality notion of the notion of instrument in the human computer or the design of interfaces. For example, David Rockery mostly he was interested in the notion of instrumentality, meaning I'm here, it doesn't matter how I'm moving actually, it doesn't matter in relationship with another tradition that is the dance tradition. So, and I think that there is something interesting in what composition as choreography is thought and dance as one world of practices, and the other is David Rockery, in 1986, and playing with interfaces that he did through MIDI in the beginning. So, I think that that's a very important tension to understand under what, when you have a dancer, actually, from the history of dance, the dancer is never going to play an instrument, because that is the most boring dancer you can imagine. So it's actually, it will be like perhaps having a jazz musician playing there. So it's a fusion of different intelligences more than an instrumentality of playing the system. So I think that notion of causality is very important, or I call it contingency. So how do you understand in a context your own contingency? For example, performing an interactive system, you have to train to understand synchronicities and asynchronicities that you may move and it may not work or may not do. But suddenly, perhaps the amount of movement that you have done will bring you a feedback or a coaching that you will do different. But the notion of instrumentality, I think, is crucial, and also how much is debated now. And how I created, a thing for dancer, and still I can see a lot of people creating an instrument for the dancer to play, and I'm like,
There's a lot.
there is a tension.
My answer, my solution is to not to try to think in terms of a combination or a final solution. We've learned that with the music environment. We have these conflicting metaphors. Like the piano used to be across the room, and so people would play the notes as they cross the room, and then people would start doing this. I want to play these notes. Why aren't you getting anything? Because you're not changing your center X. Oh, okay, so then we added extra notes, and now it's unclear that I'm crossing the room. And then we had this big debate about these two methods. They were contrary to each other. In the end, we find the solutions are not really to try to merge things, but rather do this well, and guide people through an experience that leads them to quite a rich, I hope, interactive experience. Please.
I'd like to point out how much, in my point of view, your work isn't that different from David Rockery's work. It's a development from his work. David Rockery, to remind it was 1986, and he already understood that the key point of activity I would prefer to say reactivity, because it's not always interactive.
Okay.
Most times it's reactivity. It's simultaneity, what causality. Another point that he understood really soon is that if you want to have the link between the human being understand technology, the technology has to be simple, and you don't have to learn how to use it. And the original bit speaks about this experience with sort of VNS. It used to be very nervous system and the software. Where a lot of people they were using the system, really basic system, just camera, and they were moving. It has changed the pitch. It has changed maybe the texture of the song on the beats axis. When they came out of this strange room, they were feeling like everything was connected to them, which means they were doing this. If at this very moment something did occur, they were feeling like I did it because it was simultaneous too. So what they understood is kind of the power of causality, like you said.
Well, agency is really defined in this interactive system through the interface. So that then I think agency or causality are kind of like this. Anyway, but the notion of agency, instrumentality, and of course it depends on how the system is designed.
We got to stop.
Yeah.
Sorry. We got a conference schedule. I just want to quote, do you want to quote Petra? And I want to quote Nietzsche. Let's see this first. Okay, first is Nietzsche. Verloren sein ist der Tag, wo nicht einmal getanzt wurde. That means the day is lost in which you have not danced at least twice. Okay? Dance every day. You know, not all about this. You'll lose it. You'll lose it quicker than you think. Just do some stupid dancing. Just dancing in the bedroom. Just let funny things happen. And now I want to quote Petra. This art happens in the pool with one another. I like that. I think that's a place to return to. If we get lost with our technology, I think we should return to the pool with one another. Okay, I finished. Thank you very much.